Hello and welcome to the Big Three podcast with Adarsh and Adam. In this podcast, me and Adam take you through all things cricket. This has been a historic day in cricket history as New Zealand have whitewashed India at home for the first time in 100 years of Indian Test cricket history. So, this is a special episode which we are doing apart from the regular ones, decoding what has gone wrong with Indian cricket and the past as well as the future. So, starting off, I'd like to preface what has just happened. New Zealand won by 25 runs, clean sweeping India 3-0, and it was by far, according to me, the greatest Test series victory in like I don't know, is there anything which competes with it? What about you?
No, I'm thinking from my memory as someone who's 41, nothing comes close to. I can think of better series. I can think of more exciting series. Off the top of my head, the BGT in 2021, the Ashes in 2005, and there are other ones that were more exciting and more compelling as series.
Yeah.
But the actual achievement, that is the best achievement, I think, in Test cricket.
Yeah, and that's how remarkable it was because
Mm,
even if you look at how they came from Sri Lanka, they were whitewashed 2-0
mm,
and they looked like a team which honestly were on a tour for hell, and that
yeah,
is what we said in our preview for the
mm,
Asian tour for them, that it didn't look like a promising tour of India,
no,
and they turned it around. So just looking at Indian cricket, if we had to go back, say before Kohli, we
mm,
had Ganguly, and before
mm,
that you had Kapil Dev and all sorts of Ajit Wadekar. In those
mm,
eras, you had people like Harbhajan Singh and
mm,
Anil Kumble, batters
mm,
like obviously you had the four
mm,
batters Sachin, Sehwag, Dravid,
mm,
and Lakshman. So four
mm,
compact batters who used to
mm,
be able to play in all conditions, especially
mm,
spinning conditions. Now, what
mm,
has happened is that, and even if you go before that, you had Gundappa Vishwanath, Mohinder Amarnath, and Sunil Gavaskar, all three really
mm,
good players of spin. And now you have a scenario in which players playing the IPL so much and not really grinding it out in the test scene anymore
mm,
has resulted in a set of players who are not really adept at playing spin. And I think
mm,
this has been a long time coming, because even if you were aware of how the Australia series in 2023 panned out and the
mm,
England series recently, there were a lot
mm,
of weaknesses out there for the teams to
mm,
exploit. But the lower order, especially people like Akshar Patel, bailed India out
mm,
on regular occasions.
mm,
And I think this is a really important moment where if they don't get their act right, it can go really, really south really quickly.
mm,
And just looking at the Kohli era, if according to me, what was going right for them, that people say that India won on turners, but if you really
mm,
go back to say the 2016 England tour, when
mm,
England came around to India in 2016,
mm,
it didn't have
mm,
turners. It
mm,
was a flat pitch tour where I
mm,
think India got 759 in one innings. So
mm,
yeah, that was the kind of pitch that was prepared, where
mm,
you had
mm,
seamers in play, spinners in play, batters got runs. But I
mm,
think since the WTC took over, there was a need to get points, and points were
mm,
valued more than
mm,
immediate results were valued more than quality pitches.
mm,
And as much as I'm one for not criticizing pitches, I think pitches have a role to play in where India has
mm,
got to right now, because when you prepare pitches of the kind that India has been preparing over the last 3 years, where the
mm,
spinners are the main chief architects of destruction, you're getting batters who are not really confident or don't really know how
mm.
to bat better than their opponents at spin, which used to be the case in 2016 to 2020. Do you think this is something which plays a role in what has happened?
Yes, I think that there's a broader a kind of point about cricket in general. I know this is particularly about India, where um, it, cricketers are so used to, or top quality cricketers so used to playing franchise that they might have forgot, or the ones who've only just come into cricket when franchise leagues have existed have a different technique and a different approach and a different mindset. And there's very few, I mean, except for maybe Will Young was an example of people who look to soak up the pressure rather
Yeah,
than instantly trying to take the attack to a bowler. So I think that's one thing. I think with India in general. India before this era, and then before Kohli. Uh, just for maybe people who are a bit younger, there was a stage where they weren't particularly that great away from home. They always won at home, but I'm thinking about when I was younger, that they'd
Yeah,
regularly lose, for instance, in places like England, Australia, other South Africa, etc. And they had a very good batting lineup, but they were quite weak away from home. Because I'm trying to think when I remember India tours to England. I think he won in 1990. Gooch made 333 against them.
yeah,
They avoided the follow and he came back and made another 100. And then there was one in the 90s where we played Pakistan for three and India for three. And
yeah,
everyone assumed India was the easier game. And in those days, it was England won that series, but lost to Pakistan. Pakistan with like Waki Yunus and Wasim Akram.
yeah.
So I think it's since. So obviously they were world champions in the 80s, always a tough side at home. But in terms of a kind of a dominant test side, I would say that started a bit with Ganguly, but they didn't. They started to win much more games and more games away from home. But to actually be like a dominant test side, I would probably say that was Dhoni. Um, and from Dhoni onwards, they became a very tough heavyweight side who were as good as anyone and at home were just impossible to beat.
Yeah, I have a slightly disagreement with you on
Mm,
Dhoni because I think when he captained India, I don't know
mm,
if you followed the last two test series. I think the England test
mm,
series where England won in India
mm.
with
Oh yeah, yeah,
with
I
those
remember that one.
Peterson innings. So in that
Yeah.
Dhoni captained, and whatever little consensus I have gathered from people who saw Dhoni captain, they
Mm,
say he was a really good tactical captain, just as
mm.
Rohit Sharma is, but he was not quite as proactive enough as say a Virat Kohli was
Okay.
after him. So I'd say that the Ganguly was really good. Ganguly transformed
Mm,
us from being what we were called lions at home and cats away. But after that, you
yeah.
had Virat who created not just spinners, he created a battery of pacers who did well in
Mm,
India. Ishan Sharma, Umesh Yadav, Mohammad
mm,
Shami, Bhuvneshwar Kumar. You don't see these
mm.
guys anymore, even though they're not
No.
retired. And they were not really your world beaters, the Jasprit Bumrah of right now, but they came in and delivered day in day out. If you
Mm,
I was just going through the highlights of the
mm,
2016 England series,
mm,
and if you see, most of those wickets were gone to seam. I don't know if you
mm,
remember, it was a pitch where 400, that was a series and time where
mm,
400 played 400. And in my opinion, if India has to go back to some
mm,
sort of some sort of winning ways again, they have to prepare pitches which get their spinners the advantage which they have, and the batters
mm,
the place whereas if you prepare a lottery pitch like most people mention,
mm.
then you really neutralize the advantage which
Yeah.
you'd have naturally.
But but is it almost, again, it's a wider point, a case where cricketers now play so much cricket, they're very blasé, and there isn't the preparation or really the focus on a particular series. So this moved from test to test, one day to one day, franchise league to franchise league, and it's almost like it's not like doing a tough job, like being in the mines or working on a shipyard or something. But they've got that kind of mentality almost about it, where even though they're kind of pampered, these cricketers, it is like uh like it's like hard work for them to move from game to game to game
Yep.
to game. They don't really in a way they become a bit jaded and tired by the whole thing, and they don't even have time to kind of soak it in or reflect. Do you think that's a fair point, or is that too much of an excuse?
Yeah, that's a fair point. And also, I'd like to say, like you mentioned, they play a lot of franchise leagues and they don't
Yeah,
have time for preparation. And I think
yeah,
there's an element of not having the same amount of passion which players used to
mm,
for representing their nations. Because I'll
yeah,
take the prime example of Virat Kohli. You
mm,
see him earlier, he like now, as the game test match ends, and a lot of Indian viewers will resonate with me on this. As a test
mm,
match ends, he goes back to London, he
yeah,
stays there with his wife and kids, and as the test
mm,
match starts, he comes back one day before the
mm,
test. And he does
yeah,
not have any sort of preparation before the test match.
mm,
And you see in the way he's batting along with
mm,
Rohit Sharma right now, both of them look heavily undercooked against spin and pace.
mm,
And unless you grind it out in the domestic scene, it's
mm,
just a level of entitlement, according to me, which they have reached.
mm.
And unless they work on their game, then the end is unfortunately very near for both of them.
But do you think that's it's peculiar to India, or do you think that's now kind of international cricketers worldwide?
Yeah, definitely. It's a global phenomenon, and since the topic is just on Indian
Mm.
cricket, I was focusing
Mm.
on them. But yeah,
Yeah, sure.
if you look at people across the globe, it's like
Mm.
you mentioned, like you go to Australia and
Mm.
apart from say Steve Smith and Marnus Labuschagne, all of
Mm.
the cricketers are busy in franchise leagues and other things. So
Mm.
it's definitely not something which is limited to India. But I think that if and this comes to a wider point of
Mm.
separating the two formats, because I think
Mm.
it's not plausible that you can have test cricket, because in this day and age you're not having enough preparation like you
No,
mentioned, and enough
no.
and enough grinding it out, and enough
Mm.
uh, honing your skills at the domestic stage, because you don't have the time to. The calendar is so
Mm.
fixed. You'll have time to fix your
Mm.
T20 game because you're playing a lot of franchise leagues, but
Mm.
there's not really a venue for international cricketers to go to play
Mm.
tests. So do you think that splitting the formats might be a better good decision, or a
Yeah, because
decision
I
which
remember. Well, I remember Jared Kimber mentioning it, which is some original thinking. You don't really get that on other channels, really.
yeah.
Um, so that was, I think it's the way to go forward because you can have, if all these players want to continue just playing franchise, that's fine, and then you could still have the World Cups, couldn't you? But I suppose in this kind of a model, it would be franchise leagues, and then every 4 years a World Cup, a 50th World Cup, and every 2 years a T20 World Cup, and maybe the odd bilateral just before one of those World Cups starts, and the rest would just be franchise, and then you've cleared room there, and then you could have the separate red ball competition, which will be different, like rugby league and rugby union is now. The only issue is, I wonder how many good players will play the test game, given that there's no kind of franchise leagues attached to it, and that the wages will be much less than they would be in the franchise, the white ball code.
Yeah, but you're very correct there. But I think you're talking about a calendar, like we had mentioned, where we'd have
Mm.
compartmentalization of both
Mm.
the formats. I was talking
Mm.
more about, say, you'll have Test cricket running throughout
Mm.
the year and white ball
Mm.
cricket throughout the year, but as
Oh
different,
yeah, yeah,
as individual sports, not as a
yeah.
part of a single sport. So I think
But do you think though that all the good players will be attracted by the money in the white ball format, and
it
so the people who are left in the test not Canada the test code, the red ball code, would be the players who aren't good enough to play in the white ball code?
it could happen, but I think honestly, if
Mm.
like if you're watching a team, I think it'd be better for sport, even though it
Mm.
might not do as well commercially.
Mm.
But I think it'd be a better way, because you'd have both of
Mm.
the sports evolving as they should. Because if you leave
Yeah,
T20 cricket on its own, then I don't
yeah.
think it'll do, because even for playing T20 cricket, you
Mm.
need a base of a test
Mm.
technique. But I
Yeah,
don't think for playing test cricket you need a base of T20 technique. So I think test
no.
cricket would do fine in that aspect, and I think there's a possibility of white ball cricket going down from that point
Mm.
on. Yeah, and just on the topic of Indian cricket again, I think
Mm.
just looking on this game,
Mm.
so I'll just get the score on. and
Yeah,
and
sure.
yeah, Daryl, I think Will Young, as you've mentioned earlier, Will
Mm.
Young and Daryl Mitchell, I think that was one of the best performances by an overseas
Mm.
player in India for a really long time. He
Mm.
he grinded it out under the baking sun, and I don't know if you'd been
Mm.
seeing before the lunch
Mm.
session 2 days back, but both of those were cramping up like anything, and
Yeah, yeah,
and and playing it out against Ashwin Jadeja and Washington Sundar in those
yeah.
conditions with the odds stacked against them. I think it is an innings of for the ages, and yeah, I think they deserve a lot of credit for that, and so does Ajaz Patel and Glenn Phillips, because honestly,
Yeah,
Glenn Phillips being a wicket keeper spinner doing that well, no one really expected him to be this good. Did you?
I did mention him in one of our pods, didn't I?
Yeah, you did.
But he surprised me. No, he's one of the what I would call like a modern player, um, who can do a bit of everything, and plays all the franchise league, can do a bit of everything. Exceedingly fit, a very good fielder. Um, so yeah, he's impressive, but you wouldn't call him. particularly like a particularly great batsman. Definitely not a good spinner. Um, so yeah, he did well, and I think I think Young was a bit of a surprise to me in the sense that he's always just seemed okay. I've seen him live in county cricket, and he was good, but I never looked at him in the same way. You look at Williamson or Kohli or Root or whatever, or I mean, he's kind of a bit more old-fashioned, isn't he, in the way he plays?
Yeah.
But he's done really well there, and having to fill the shoes of Williamson, that was really impressive. You can't really praise him enough, I think.
Yeah, and I think he was the only one who looked at East from the New Zealand side, along with
Mm,
Rishabh Pant from India. So both of those players, I
yeah,
think,
that's right.
both of those players were the only two who had like. I remember a comment from someone on Twitter when I was going through
Mm,
when the innings was happening. They said that Pant and Young were playing on different pitches, and that's what it felt like. Because to
mm,
other players, you look when say someone like uh,
mm,
uh who can I say, like yes, Shubman Gill, when he came in, the
mm,
ball seemed like it was doing all sorts, but it wasn't
mm,
actually. And just coming on to the Indian innings, I cannot emphasize. Also, just as a final note on New Zealand, I think
mm,
Tom Latham did a really good job captaining the
mm.
New Zealand
Yeah.
side,
And he
and
just came in for this series, didn't he? He was just
yeah,
captain for this series. Yeah.
and he was the captain for the 2021 WTC final as well
Yeah.
for a bit. So he is a really lucky charm for New Zealand. Uh, for India, I just think that there was a lot of careless batting in there, and uh, I don't know if you saw the shot of Sarfaraz Khan. He came in
Mm,
and he swept it right into the hands of
mm.
the deep square leg
No,
fielder.
I heard
And
about that. Yeah.
yeah, so if I don't know, like he has an average of 70 in domestic
Mm,
cricket for India.
mm,
So you would expect the guy to make more than just 100 score,
mm,
and he's been kind of an Ollie Pope for us. He made
mm.
150 in the first test, and after that,
Mm,
complete point blank, nothing after that.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think if he's got to cement his place in the side, then he's got to do better. Same with Yashasvi Jaiswal. I think Ian Chappell put out a tweet where he said that
Mm,
in no scenario can you have a place where a reverse sweep can be safer than playing down the ground. And he said that the
mm,
commentary box was saying that the reverse sweep is safer, but that's how Ashwin got out and
mm,
Yashasvi Jaiswal. He's such a talented player, but I think I think he's been found out a bit in the
mm.
in these spinning pitches because he hasn't really done well. And coming
No.
on to Rohit's batting, he has taken a leaf out of how he played in white ball cricket. I think
Yeah.
everyone's seen how he has changed the way India batted, especially in the 2023 World Cup, where he came in and started smacking everyone up top. But before that, even in the 2021 England series, he used to be a
Mm,
really compact test batter.
mm. Yeah.
He scored two centuries in England in that series, and
Yeah.
he was a batter for tough conditions. And I
Yeah.
think that the change in mindset, which he admitted himself that he was not doing well in the series, has kind of led to him loosening up, and he plays balls which he wouldn't normally have had 3 years back. And I
Mm,
don't know if he is capable of going back to that before a really important Border Gavaskar trophy. With Virat, I think it's just a simple thing. You bring on a left arm spinner. Even I could bowl left arm spin to him these days, and he'd chip one to my hand or get bowled. That's the thing. And going down, I think Rishabh Pant. I can't command
mm,
give more praise to that guy because he's the
mm.
lone warrior for India in that innings, and he counter-attacked, and that was the reason India got even close to chasing that total. We were around 40 for 5, I think. Jadeja, Ashwin, Washington Sundar, all disappointed big time. And just speaking about India's spinners and pacers,
Mm,
uh, again, like coming on to Gautam Gambhir and
mm,
Rohit Sharma's captaincy,
mm,
they picked Mohammad Siraj over Kuldeep Yadav and Akshar Patel. Now I'll
mm.
tell you the dynamics of that. So Mohammad Siraj bowled 3 overs in a total of 120 overs that New Zealand have batted. He
Yeah.
he he was gone for 14 runs and didn't pick up a wicket. He batted one ball and got out in that ball. So I don't know what's the logic behind picking a second seamer when you're preparing a rank turner. What did you say about that?
Well, I don't. I don't know. Is that a sign of someone who's got a bit muddled because they're on the ropes? Do you think that could be the case? You know, when you're kind of chasing it, you're losing, you're chasing your tail, and you start to make the wrong decisions. There's a bit of panic. Do you think it could be that?
Yeah, I would not actually put that down to panic.
Mm,
I think it was just a really bad call. It was a ceremonial decision. Like, uh, people generally associate cricket with, you have to pick seamers in there because
yeah.
seamers, like, you could go in with five seamers and no spinner and no one would bat an eye. But play four spinners and wow, they are not playing a seamer. It's like
Mm,
it's the end of the world. But you have to
yeah.
go
Yeah.
horses for courses. It's a pitch
Definitely.
which you decided to make a rank turner, and after that I just think it was a bad decision. And same with deciding to send change the batting order in the first innings.
Mm,
They sent Jadeja over Sarfaraz Khan, and that completely shifted the dynamic. I think India were 108 for 4 and
mm.
again collapsed
What about
to.
the night watchman? What about Siraj as the night watchman?
Yeah, that was also a bad decision. People were saying that Kohli asked him to go above him, but Kohli
Mm.
wanted to bat. It was Gambhir who said that he should go up top to bat,
Oh, that's
and
interesting.
yeah, and Siraj just he's been elected to inspector. He's a DSP
Mm.
now, and there's a really good meme going around that he can shoot everyone in the ground and he has immunity to do that. But yeah, it
So
was.
Gambia overruled Kohli there, did he?
Yeah, Gambhir overall Kohli, but I
Mm.
don't think he had a major problem with that. I think he'd
Mm.
take that. I do the first run he took where he got run out against. I
Mm.
think Matt Henry got that run out, which was heavily
Mm.
discussed. He was just trying to get off strike against the left arm spinner because he was
Mm.
feeling uncomfortable. It was nothing to
Mm.
do with just wanting to take a single
Mm.
without the additional caveats. Also, just coming on now, coming on to the Border Gavaskar Trophy, because I think
Mm.
that is where we are headed to next, and
Mm.
also the World Test Championship final,
Mm.
because both of those things are very relevant to the conversation now. There are
Mm.
some major non-picks, non-selections for
Mm.
India. They have not picked Kuldeep Yadav. They have
Mm.
not picked Akshar Patel. They have not picked Shardul Thakur,
Mm.
and they have not picked Hardik Pandya. Obviously, like he
Mm.
was not there. So I don't
Mm.
understand. Like, they are going to be debuting a guy. Have you heard of Nitish Kumar Reddy?
I've heard the name, but I've never seen him.
Yeah, so he's never played a test match for India, and I have
Mm.
seen very little of him. They're planning to
Yeah.
debut him straight in Perth, and I don't know how that goes. I think Mason Crane could give him an outline of how it goes debuting in Australia first up,
Yeah.
and I think it's something which can go really really bad, and Australia is not an easy place to tour, I think.
Um, well, I think that there's a few things, but when judging how well they'll do in Australia, there's three ways of looking at this series as like a sign of what they're going to do. If you just look at this series as um, these these things happen every kind of blue moon, and sometimes things just go wrong, and then we'll go back to normal, then that's fine. Or you could say these things are part of a part of the new reality of modern cricket, where it's a conveyor belt of games, and these things are going to happen now and then. Or you could say there's an aging side, and pe- people like legends like Sharma or Kohli are at the end of their career and are past their peak. I don't know if it's controversial to say that. And so if that's the reason, then they will be in trouble in Australia. If it's just one of those things, then they can just go again. But is it something a bit more terminal with these players? Because if it is, they're in trouble because I think Australia's attack um, is up there with one of the all-time great attacks. I think it's excellent. You've got like Stark, Hazelwood, Cummings, Lyon. I think Green's missing, isn't he? He's a good all-rounder, but even
Yeah,
if you forget him, um, I don't know how much Mitchell Mars can bowl now, but he's a decent fifth bowling option. And even guys like Head can bowl a bit as well. Their batting isn't as good, but that attack is brilliant. And if the the Indian batters aren't on form or in decline, they will be really exposed by that attack. It's an excellent attack.
yeah, it definitely is. But I think the Indian batters, they are susceptible to spinning conditions nowadays
Mm,
more than seaming condition. I don't think that
mm,
they are in terminal decline overall. I just
mm.
think that
Yeah.
their spin game is really down. I think
Okay.
I think that needs to be fixed. But uh, just going by what I saw in South Africa from Kohli
Mm,
specifically, he looked at ease and he didn't have any problems.
yeah.
And he enjoys batting in Australia. He has an average of 60. So I think that it could be a redemption for him. And about Rohit Sharma, I think he hasn't really fared really well, which is
Mm,
contrary to what you'd expect of Rohit. He looks like a batter who would enjoy batting on Australia. He has a really
mm.
good technique against pace, and he likes the ball coming onto the bat as well. Whereas he averages around 35 in Australia. So yeah, I think
Are
though,
you concerned by the fact that Kohli's 36 this week? I think on Tuesday.
yeah.
Is that a concern for you, or is that does it matter now because players are fitter than they used to be years ago, or whatever? Or is it a concern? Is 36 getting to be an age where it's too old to play high class international cricket on the whole?
Um, I would not put it down solely to
Mm,
his age, because I think
mm,
the age factor is looked at a lot more than it should, because there are a
mm,
lot of other things in play. I think definitely his hand-eye coordination is
mm,
going like it's not as how it used to be, like say 3 years back
mm,
or even 2 years back. But overall, I don't think that his age has a wider implication on his game,
mm.
and if he can get past his mental block, I very unpopularly expect him to do well in Australia. And just
Okay.
yeah, and just coming on to how say likes of Shubman Gill and Jaiswal will
Mm,
fare there. Shubman had a really good series last time in Australia, so I
mm,
expect him to do the same there. Unless he has this problem against the in swinging ball, where
mm,
I don't, I think you had seen him even against Jimmy Anderson.
mm,
When he came
mm,
forward, he used to get bowled. He
mm,
had a real big problem with his bat pad gap. So if he can't
mm,
fix that, then he will be found out really quickly in Australian pitches. And Jaswal, I think, is an interesting one because he didn't do particularly well in South Africa. He had an average of 5 in 2 tests in South Africa. So
mm.
there is a possibility that this tour can be an expose of the myth that has been built around Yashasvi
And what
Jaiswal.
about things like momentum and confidence? Because they play a big factor in cricket, especially when it's two sides that are kind of evenly matched. If India are coming out of after losing being whitewashed at home for the first time ever in their history, and then they lose the first couple of tests in Australia, even if they're close, then the kind of heads drop, don't they, and shoulders drop. So things like momentum do have a big or like really big in cricket.
Yeah, but I think it works the other way for
Mm,
Asian teams. If
mm,
I just think that for Asian teams, the worse they go, the downer they go, the downer they hit rock bottom, the better
mm.
they come above it. Even if
Okay.
you saw the 2021 first test against Australia,
Oh yeah, yeah.
I just have this feeling that there's some sort of Jay Shah script going on where he's preparing some sort of really good 4-1 4-0 series. I might be dreaming here because
Mm,
I know that I'm sounding a bit ridiculous, but I think
mm,
there's a possibility of there being redemption. But being
mm.
realistic, uh, I don't expect India to do well than 2-2, or 2-2 is the best result I see India doing there as
Now,
of now.
will 2-2 be enough to make the WTC final?
There have to be a lot of results to go India's way. Then England have to win 2-1 against New Zealand, and
Hmm.
I think South Africa would have to lose half of their tests. If that happened, then India would qualify. And Sri Lanka, I
I
think,
can't see South Africa not winning at least three of their last four tests myself because they're at
y-
home, aren't they? At home to Sri Lanka and at home to Pakistan.
yeah, but if New Zealand can whitewash India at home, so
Yeah, yeah,
there
true.
is a possibility. But yeah,
Yeah, true.
yeah, but in all likelihood, unless India goes on to at least a margin of 3-2 has to be there for India to do well.
Mm,
Now, coming on to Australia, they
mm,
have a really big uh, conundrum in the opening
mm,
slot, which has been discussed a lot. They have four
yeah.
options there: Sam Constas, Cameron
Mm,
Bancroft, Marcus Harris, and
mm.
obviously David Warner, because he'll never stop prodding his hand above.
They can't be picking Harris again. He always he comes in and out of the side every now and then, and he never really does anything, does he? His domestic record's fine.
Yeah.
but his international record isn't good enough. They can't be picking Harris. You can't have Warner coming back, I don't think. So that's just two options really, Bancroft or the youngster.
Yeah, there are two more just to
Yeah.
like I forgot their names. There's Matthew Renshaw and Nathan
Oh yeah.
McSweeney, and also one more guy, Bo Webster. So there are a few options there,
Hmm.
but mainly those
Renshaw's
two.
another one who hasn't really
Yeah.
pulled up any trees, is he really? I don't, Probably from that list, I'd go with Bancroft. I know he was like sullied by the ball tampering scandal, but so was Warner, and he came back, and Steve Smith. So I don't know why it's a big issue. Um, it isn't ideal, whoever they pick, but I'd probably go Bancroft.
Okay, I think that they are not going for Bancroft for
Mm,
two reasons because
mm,
obviously like they don't like him. They have
mm,
made him the scapegoat of the
mm.
Sandpaper Gate, and
Yeah.
secondly that I think he had a really good season last year,
Mm,
and he
mm.
had a really good season for the early matches, but he's not doing well in the A games for now. Um, if I were to pick myself, I think I have looked a bit of Bo Webster batting, and I think
Mm.
Bo Webster or Sam Constas, one of those
Mm.
two could be Australia's openers. Or of course, you could have Travis Head going up top and Mitch Marsh.
I
Both of
wouldn't want
them.
to jeopardize Head's form because he's good where he is really. I wouldn't want to take that gamble.
Yeah, I wouldn't either, but I think there's a possibility that Australia
Yeah.
does that, and they've been talking
Yeah.
about that as well. So, and coming on to Aaron Hardy, he's a really
Mm.
exciting prospect. I think bowled in Australia, England for those ODIs, and I think
Oh yeah.
he will trouble some of the Indian batters with. With Stark, Cummins, and Hazelwood, there's nothing really to preface about them because, as you mentioned,
Mm.
they're probably one of the all-time great pace bowling
Yeah.
attacks. Lyon,
And they've got Boland who in certain think in Melbourne, it seems to be unplayable in Melbourne, doesn't he?
yeah, Scott Boland, and he really
Yeah.
troubles Indian batters as well. And I think there's one more guy, who was that?
Oh,
Yeah, Sean.
he's a South African who played for Glamorgan, Nessa.
Yeah, Michael Neser, and
Yeah.
Sean Abbott. Both of those two are
Yeah. Oh
still.
yeah. Yeah. Abbott from
Yeah,
Surrey.
yeah. So both of those are around, and I think they have a lot of pace bowling options. So I think Australia dominate India in the bowling
Mm.
front for now, and in the batting front, I think that
Mm.
India is still above them, just on the
I'm trying
reputation
to think
alone.
which of the bat which of the Australian batters would you like in the India side?
Uh, Steve Smith,
Head,
obviously.
obviously, I suppose. Head.
Steve
Yeah, Head,
Smith,
Steve Smith.
Head, and Manas. So if
Yeah.
I
What
had, if
about Kawaja?
no, I would not pick Khawaja.
Okay.
Yeah,
And the
because
keeper's not bad. Whichever one they pick, well, even if it Carey, I think at the moment, but even
I'm
Inglis is
going to
not bad.
pick him over Rishabh Pant.
No, no. But I mean, like their keeping issue isn't an issue like the opening issue, is it? The keeper's fine, whoever they
Yeah,
pick.
like if we had to do a one-on-one dissection
Mm,
of what would be India's team versus
mm,
Australia's team. So if you look at Rohit Sharma versus, say, in this scenario, whoever comes
mm.
in, say Cameron Bancroft,
Okay, yeah.
I think Rohit wins that.
Yeah, yeah,
Jaiswal
definitely.
versus Khawaja.
Um,
I would vote for Khawaja here.
yeah, I think Jaswell in the future, if you like extrapolate him over the next few years, he might be better than Kawaja, but now I'd take Kawaja, especially in Australian conditions.
Yeah. Labuschagne versus Gill. I
Mm,
think on current form, I'd have to edge it to Gill because
yeah.
he,
Labuschagne isn't the same the player he was a couple of years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago.
yeah,
He has dropped off a bit.
he looks a bit jaded. So I'd pick
Yeah.
Gill. At four, Smith or Kohli, I would go for. I would pick none of them actually because because both are really down on form. But yeah,
Yeah, but Smith's
I
been unlucky that he opened the batting. It was a bit unfair on him. I don't know if I think maybe he suggested it, but it's kind of harmed his average in a way that if he'd stayed in the middle order, I don't think he would have had as bad a time.
yeah. So I'd go for 50-50. I'd go for
Mm,
point 0.5. But what about you?
mm. I think I'd go Smith at the moment in the middle order. If you're playing Smith as a middle order batter, I'd go Smith.
Okay, so Smith for you,
Mm.
and after that you have at five, Travis Head versus KL Rahul. I think Travis wins that, and
Yeah,
no
heads
heads down.
heads move into exceptional territory now.
Yeah,
He's really kicked on.
yeah, and you have Rishabh Pant versus Alex Carey. Pant wins
Oh,
that.
Pant, yeah,
Yeah, and then you have Jadeja versus Cameron, no, Aaron Hardy. So
yeah. Or
I'd
is it going to be Marsh maybe?
yeah, Aaron Hardy or Marsh, and I'd if Marsh bowls, then I think
Mm.
Marsh is the clear winner there, and if Marsh doesn't, I'd edge it to Jadeja. What about
Yeah,
you?
yeah, I agree with you there.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
let's give it a 50-50 then. Just
yeah,
50. Yeah, and at number 8 you have at number 8 is the real issue for India. It's either of Nitish Kumar Reddy or Kuldeep's not there. So Washington Sundar. Whereas for Australia you
Cummins
have
probably.
Pat Cummins. Yeah, Pat Cummins. So obviously
Yeah,
it goes to
Cummins
Cummins.
definitely.
Then you
Yeah,
have say Bumrah versus Stark. It goes to Bumrah.
yeah,
And you have Siraj or Akashdeep versus Hazelwood. You give that to
Hazelwood,
Hazelwood.
isn't it?
And
Yeah,
you have Lion versus Siraj or whoever there is. Like Lion wins that. So I think
yeah.
it's around 6.5, 3.5 to India. To
Mm.
Australia, 6.5, 3.5 to Australia. So it's tilted towards Australia at this stage.
Also, I'd say Australia are really taking it seriously, aren't they? In a sense that all the talk is this is as big as the Ashes for them now. That they're really you if they're talking that big, they're not going to take this lightly, I think. Um, there was a stage in the 2000s, I think, after Ganguly's side had beaten them, um, where Australia was suddenly saying that the BGT is bigger than the Ashes because at that time England weren't winning any. And then when England beat them in 2005, they went back to having the Ashes as their main Test series. I think it's getting to the stage again now where it could be the BGT, and that might have taken over. I don't know if you picked that up as well.
Yeah, I think
Um,
the Border Gavaskar Trophy is by far the biggest event after the Ashes in Test cricket,
mm,
and for Indians, it is the Border Gavaskar Trophy, which is the
yeah.
biggest Test event. So yeah,
Do
I
you
think
think
for
also as Australia changes as a country, obviously for years, mainly a country, obviously apart from the Aborigines, but mainly a country full of people from Britain and Ireland, all the surnames, British and Irish surnames, the people all descended from Britain and Ireland. But the country has changed over the years. There's a lot more Asians there now, Eastern Europeans, Greeks, Asians, and so the rivalry with England is less kind of less obvious. It's it's there isn't the same kind of
eeriness to
big
it.
big yeah, big brother little brother or cousin kind of rivalry or importance. But now that the country's changed and even when I was young, Australia used to call itself Australasia, and now I hear more and more Australians calling themselves Asians. Do you know what I mean? That there's been a change where it's kind of tilted a bit more towards Asia as a country. I don't know if you picked that up yourself.
Yeah, they have become a diverse country now, and
Yeah.
that has implications. But if I were to narrowly put down why the BGT is bigger for them, India
Mhm.
makes them more money right now, so that's the
Oh yeah,
reason.
that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another point. So, from years ago, India now is an economic powerhouse in cricket, and it's not like I don't know up until the 70s or 80s where uh, cricket was controlled by the MCC in London.
Yeah.
It's now dominated by India. So yeah, that's a good point. Both financially and kind of politically, India is a powerhouse in cricket, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So you're really correct there. India have transformed into economic powerhouses, and it's been that way since I think the start of the 21st century,
Mm,
where India took its satellite television to the next level,
mm,
and and now coming on to the pitches in Australia, the
mm,
Perth pitch will I think play very specific to Australia's advantage, and they've
mm,
planned it really well because the first test is in Perth, the second is in Adelaide in the
mm.
day-night test, the third is in Brisbane. So you have three tests which Australia are isolated to. They win generally. So I think that
Yeah.
they've been really clever with the pitch selection in that regard.
It's funny that Brisbane isn't first. It's normally the first test, isn't it? And it's always
Yeah.
so hard to win at Brisbane. It's like a fortress.
Yeah. And I think if India has to win one out of those three,
Mm,
other than that, obviously they're losing the series or drawing it. But
mm,
I expect the Adelaide pitch, obviously it swings around a lot, and then you have Brisbane,
mm,
which is hard to play. Melbourne and Sydney are more to India's liking. They spin a bit, and
yep,
they are a little bit flatter. But
yep,
yeah, I think that all of those five pitches are going to test the Indian batters.
mm,
And also coming on, just finishing the preview here,
mm,
uh for me, just the highest run scorers, highest wicket takers, for me the highest
mm,
run scorer in this series from India will be Virat Kohli. And
mm.
with the ball, the highest wicket taker for India will be Akashdeep. And
Okay, not Bumrah.
no, I think Bumrah will not play all five tests.
Okay.
And for Australia, I think the batter to watch out for will be, or the highest run scoring batter will be Travis Head. And with
Mm.
the ball, it'll be Josh Hazelwood. What about you?
I think I'm 100% agreement with you about Head. Um, the ball, it could be any one of those attacks, but I think because sometimes seamers get rotated or injured, I'm going to go for Lyon as the leading wicket taker.
Okay,
Um,
that's a
yeah,
possibility.
with India, I'm still going to go for Bumrah as the leading wicket taker. Um, run scorer, I'm not so sure now. Um, I don't know if it will be Kohli because I'm not sure because his form in the last, yeah, maybe even the last 2 years in Test cricket hasn't been that
5 years.
great, has it?
He's 5 years.
Five,
He's
five, you say? Okay.
Yeah.
I've noticed it more the last couple, but maybe I just wasn't like focusing on as much. But oh, I don't know. I might. Well, I don't know. That's just, I'm gonna go Pant.
Pant. Okay, yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
pick. That's a good pick.
yeah.
And our series predictions, I'll go for, I said 2-2, but that was more an objective look at how
Yeah.
it should pan out. But my
Mm,
prediction from my point of view
mm.
will be 4-1 to India.
Well, one, you started this this podcast off so depressed after losing to New Zealand, and now by the end of it, you turned around and done a
Yeah,
done a complete volte face.
yeah.
I before this New Zealand series started, I thought the BGT would be 2-2. But now
Yeah.
after this New Zealand series, I think confidence might be an issue. Uh, Questions about maybe an aging side. It could be completely wrong, but I'm going to go for Australia 3-1 now. I've changed.
Yeah, that is a fair prediction, and I'm just going because I'd love the comments at me and the applause which I'll get after India, if India does really do it.
Yeah.
So I'm just going for that, and I have a slight guy inside of me telling me that there's a possibility India has a shot at redemption. Now,
Oh, they definitely do. Yeah, it's just for me a question of confidence after this series. That's all. The players
yeah,
are
yeah,
world-class
and
players,
and
obviously.
you have a good point there. I think you have something to say about the future of franchise cricket and some players in that regard.
Yeah, all it is because I was looking at your tweets today and a lot
Yeah,
of other Indian fans' tweets, and they were making complaints that I've been feeling about England players, but also noticed about other players as well. And I think for for people who support India, Australia, and England, they haven't had to witness what other countries have. In a sense, a lot of the West Indian players just don't play Test cricket for them. It's been the same with some Sri Lankan players, and they've had to experience this for the last I don't know 15 years or something. And although the players aren't pulling out of playing for India, Australia, England, they're definitely more jaded by playing international cricket. They definitely seem to um, not be as upset by defeat as they used to be. And I just think it's a conveyor belt of non-stop cricket, and it's made the players a bit blasé about these series. I'll pinpoint a few examples. You were talking about I think you mentioned Kohli just flying in before the game started.
yeah,
But for me, a really interesting one was Pat Cummins, who is a really exceptional player and a good captain. He I remember the West Indies winning a dramatic test in Australia at the beginning of the year, and it meant the series was 1-1. So it wasn't a dead rubber. The series just actually finished 1-1.
Yeah,
And he didn't seem that particularly bothered. And he went over and he congratulated the West Indies in a way that I could never imagine Steve Waugh or Alan Border. I could imagine those two just shaking their heads, disgusted, um, and
yeah,
smashing the door in, when they got back into the dressing room, just out of
yeah,
kind of frustration. Cummings took it really well. England and Pakistan, the series just gone. England lost the third test, and it just seemed like they couldn't wait to get home. Um, it it didn't really sink in. They lost the series, didn't really seem to be an issue, and they just moved on to the next tour. A few of the players went off to West Indies to play in a kind of a meaningless ODI series, which is done just to fulfill some kind of obligation. And
yeah,
then they'll move again to New Zealand, and if they win that or lose, it doesn't really seem to matter. And I don't think that's particularly just an England problem. I think I've noticed this amongst all the players who play franchise cricket, and I think this is a trend. And this is maybe going back to your point earlier about separating the two red and white ball into two separate sports almost. Because I wonder how much longer can this be the case where there's a lot of cricket being played, where there's a lot of series where people aren't playing their first team. There's a lot of cricket being played where people aren't particularly bothered if they win or lose these bilateral series, not just ODI, but also red ball ones. And um, is this kind of tenable? People paying money to watch it, the same price they would pay for a series that was deemed to matter. And is it tenable? And is this how long can this go on for? And just thinking really about something Sam Billings said. He played 1 year. He played in like every franchise going, and he came back and said he was tired, as
yeah,
if he just come back from the Vietnam War or something. He
yeah,
he made a decision to play every franchise league going, got
yeah. All
got
those
well
mil
remunerated for it.
Yeah, all those millions of dollars at the cost of no fans and no pressure really had a huge toll
Exactly,
on
yeah.
him. That
Because unless
money
it's
is,
the IPL, there's no pressure on you. You go to Dubai or something, or the Cayman Islands, or the Hundred. No one gives a toss about who wins these franchise leagues. There's no pressure. In some of these leagues, there's a high scale match fixing, which is something you like to talk
yeah,
about in the future. But
yeah,
it's just money, basically money for nothing. No one cares if you get any runs at all.
yeah.
And he comes back, oh, I'm so tired. Oh, I feel so sorry for you, Sam Billings. But that seems to be like the attitude of the modern player, sadly.
Y-
So I just wonder, just as a point, I wondered the things you and some of the Indian fans were saying about the Indian cricket team. I think it might be a broader issue with players in general.
Yeah, so the coins are pulling his pants down right now. On Pat Cummins, I think, like on the topic you mentioned of people not
Mm,
being as upset by losses, I think
mm,
you made a really good point there, and people don't seem to be that way. Like with Rohit Sharma, that happened. He said that
no,
12 साल में एक बार हारना चलता है, which means losing once in 12 years means does
mm,
not mean a whole lot, and and that's a wider point, and people just seem to take losses better because they're not as they're not as passionate. I think it's the
yeah,
right word, because they're not as excited about playing for the country.
no,
Like I think this there was this guy, he is Farooq engineer, and from West Indies also. I think there was this one player from the 80s. I don't really remember his name
mm,
properly. He said that nowadays you guys just play for money. Back then we didn't get any money from our boards. Yet
yeah,
we used to play for our country. So that's a good point. But I think on Cummins, it's not really him being a product of the environment. He's just that kind of a person who
okay.
takes
But
serious,
I
like,
suspect if he'd lost to England or India like that, he would have been a bit more upset.
yeah,
Do
yeah,
you?
he would have been, but I think that with him, it's not as much of a environmental product of the cricket culture, wherein it's just the kind of person he is. He is a
Yeah.
very he's a very outgoing, very un-Australian kind of captain, and I think people say that this Australian team is the hardest to not like, because they're all
Mm.
they're all very cheerful. They don't give it back. Till Warner was there, there was something to pick on them, but he
Yeah,
is
yeah.
gone. He is gone, so they're very un-Australian, and I think many Australians also say to them, just harden up a bit, get a cigarette, and
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, because I
give,
remember when Border was captain, there was one game where Robin Smith asked if he could have a drink, and Border just said no. So he wouldn't even let the opposition have a drink of water or something if they were hot or something. He was that tough. Now there's no way that would happen, is there really?
Yeah, and that's just a change in the world. I think it's how the world has changed over the years, and Australia has taken that in their cricket as well. Coming on to the future of Indian Test cricket,
Mm,
and also I just missed a point earlier about the New Zealand Test. I think there were a lot of people complaining that New Zealand won the first test because of seaming conditions. New Zealand won the
mm,
first test in seaming conditions. They won the second test in relatively flat conditions.
mm.
Third one in a rank turner. So
Yeah,
they have not won the series because of conditions. They have won the
no,
series because they have thoroughly outclassed India in all three facets of the game. So anyone trying to make excuses for this Indian team, you just get get rid of those thoughts, because if this team has to improve for the future, those excuses won't do any good to the team. And
no.
they have New Zealand have just played India better, played better than India, and that's the reality of it.
And
And
do you think it's fair to say New Zealand played above themselves and India maybe took it a bit lightly at the beginning
yeah, New
or
Zealand
underestimated New Zealand? Is that fair to say?
yeah, New Zealand made a really good sum of all parts. They had a
Mm,
really good collective performance, which no one expected, and India had a very, like, everyone fell apart. So yeah, you could
mm,
say that it was something which happens once in a blue moon, as it has in 1 in 100 years. So yeah,
mm,
I think you're very correct that New Zealand performed above their pay grade, I'd say, and India
mm.
did below that. No
Yeah.
disrespect to New Zealand as well. They are a very
No, no.
smartly run side with only 5 million people. They
Yeah.
are the best sporting ecosystem which has ever been, according to me, because they won. I think the rugby team won against England last day.
Yeah, they did, yeah.
Yeah, and they're a
And
really good.
and also it's 5 million people, but half of them are women, so that takes them out straight away. Then you've got old people and young people. So how many actual people of cricket age in that country? It
ex-
must be one of the smallest pools to pick from, really, of all the nations.
Yeah, they're really good at grooming, identifying, and
Mm,
developing talent. So
yeah.
yeah, I think if a country like India had the ecosystem of New Zealand with the money it has,
Mm.
I just don't know where it'd go, but that's the reality of it.
And
Now
also,
come,
cricket isn't their number one sport.
yeah,
So
cricket isn't their number one sports.
no, they are rugby union mad, and they're even big fans of rugby league as well. So it's a bit like England with football. It's amazing for someone saying India or Pakistan to kind of envisage this, but I wonder even now after this amazing victory, this will get less coverage than a a, a win against England in rugby that wasn't a World Cup or anything. It was just a one-off game between them in the autumn internationals in rugby. We'll still probably get more than this kind of fantastic achievement in India in cricket.
And just on that, I know we're not
Mm,
discussing on this topic, but I saw
mm,
the English players get into the venue for the game, and I saw a lot of English fans. It was completely packed from all sides coming in to watch, and all were cheering.
mm.
And I have never seen in the road an English cricketer going, and a lot of people just cheering for them getting onto the ground. So is rugby
No,
more popular than cricket in England?
no, I would say probably cricket's more popular, but Twickenham is like has like a great atmosphere. It's always packed for internationals. It's I suppose it's a different with rugby and cricket, rugby and football, because they're only one's 90 minutes, one's 80 minutes. You tend to be on your feet all the time and cheering and everything. Whereas cricket, especially Test cricket, it's a bit more sedate. You've got 6.5 hours in a day, so you're not kind of on your feet shouting and screaming like all the way through.
Yeah, and it's not for the lowly, it's one for the posh people, obviously, which is why
Yeah,
it's played
yeah.
for 6.5 hours. No, not even a question of that. Everyone is welcome to cricket. Now on the future of Indian Test cricket, which we started on, uh,
Mm,
I had 11 for you. Like I
mm,
prepared, which you play, say after this team could represent India for 5 years. You have
mm,
Jaiswal, Gill,
mm,
Sai
mm,
Sudarshan at number three, one of Devdutt Patikal, Rajat Patidar, and Mushir Khan, one of
mm,
them at four. You have Rishabh Pant at five. You
mm,
have uh, you have someone at six, and at seven you have Aksa Patel. At eight
mm,
you have one of Nitish Kumar Reddy and Washington Sundar. At
mm,
nine you have Harshit Rana. At nine, you
mm,
have at nine you have Bumrah.
mm,
At 10 you have Siraj, and at 11 you
mm,
have Prasidh Krishna or someone like that. So you have a group of players
mm,
with Gill captaining, according to me. So you have a group of
mm,
players who are ready to take over from the
mm,
current batch. So I think that the future of Indian Test cricket is not really in very bad waters, because there are
mm.
people in there who take over from the current batch. So what did you make of that 11?
Well, that's a good 11. I wonder if I don't think anyone's questioning the ability for India to produce good players each generation. I think they'll be completely fine for that. I think there was one guy who was tweeting today. I think you sent me the tweet where he was saying that the problem wasn't so much that it was the fact that the Indian public might lose interest in Test cricket as a consequence of losing this series. I don't know if you agreed with that or not, but so I don't think it's necessarily the case that India won't produce players to replace some of the legendary ones now. I'm sure they will, but it's just the Indian if the Indian public stop watching Test cricket, then it really might just be dead in the end. And I think maybe that's the worry, because people always said here it was such a great thing that Kohli was Indian captain because he really did. Um, he was enthusiastic about Test cricket. He thought that was the best format, and whilst he was leading India, there was never any issue about India kind of uh, uh, well, it wouldn't be devaluing, but not prioritizing Test cricket. And I suppose the worry is now that maybe that there might be a trend for them not to prioritize it. I think that's what the tweet was suggesting. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, I think that there's a real possibility of that, because there is a possibility that there's two possibilities there. In
Mm,
one case, India does really badly in the Australia series and just
mm,
goes on to have couple of bad years, and the
yeah,
BCCI decides, okay, it's time not to focus
yeah,
on Test cricket, and the fans also say that, okay, we'll not watch it. And
yeah,
then after that, I think Test cricket might really implode and just
yeah,
exists as some sort of Australian England Ashes
yeah,
agreement that happens every 2 years. That
yeah,
is a
yeah.
possibility. And the second possibility is the BCCI recognizes the flawed structure of the WTC,
Mm,
and just to win it, they change it and make it better. And we hope that the second one is the one that eventuates.
yes. Do you
Yeah.
think that could even happen for the next cycle, or is it too late?
If India doesn't make the final, yes.
Okay,
Yeah, if India
that's
does.
good news because we it. I don't want to impugn the World Test Championship because I think it's given meaning to a lot of series, but the way it is now, it isn't adequate really.
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
the great thing was last time round, India Australia were the two best sides, and even though the way the World Test Championship was formulated was wrong, the two best sides got to the final. So you think, oh, that's fine then. If
Yeah.
this one is between South Africa and Sri Lanka, say, or South Africa and New Zealand, no disrespect to any of them, they won't be the two best sides really in the world, and they would have they would have really got there because obviously they've done some great test wins, but they're only playing half. I mean, in some cases, some sides might even be playing a third of what India, Australia, and England are playing. And you can't really have a league where someone's playing 13 games in a year, another side's playing five. I don't think for a league that's correct, really.
Yeah, most definitely, because you're not having fair competition then.
No,
It's a different, it's just a group of test matches which you have suddenly allotted points to. There's no structure to it, which
no,
obviously we pointed out how we'd solve that. And also
because
just talking, yeah, go on. Were you saying
oh, you
something?
just is it possible that they could just count? So everyone has 8 games that count towards a World Test Championship, say, and even if England are playing Australia for 5 tests, only 3 of those te tests count in relation to the World Test Championship. Could they do something like that?
I'm not too sure about that, because I think if you have tests outside of the World Test
Mm,
Championship, then it'll look like, even though they have not lost value object, because they
mm,
used to be like that pre the World Test Championship. But
mm,
if you do that, I think there'll be some sort of loss of relevance to those
mm.
matches, especially non-Ashes
Yeah,
games, because the
mm,
Ashes might be an event in and of itself, but
yeah,
outside of that, the games will just be pointless at that point, because South Africa and boards like South Africa, Bangladesh, they don't really enjoy hosting test matches. They lose around 10 million quid per game.
mm.
So I don't
What
think
about saying? that the BGT and the Ashes are series within in their own rights, and they don't count as part of the WTC. And these are just series in their own rights, and the rest of the games are part of the WTC, but these ones aren't.
That could be a possibility, but if I were the administrator, I wouldn't do that, because
Oh,
I think that if it so happens that the two teams are not in the same division,
mm,
let that be. You'll not have. It's not that Manchester City and Manchester United play each other every year. There might be
no,
there might be a month where they don't play, a 6 month period where they don't play. But
mm,
when they do play together with the odds favoring it
mm,
makes for a better context. Unlike now, where
mm.
you have India and Pakistan rigged to play in every single tournament together,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Australia and
that's not
England.
satisfactory.
Yeah, that look feels forced. That does not feel does not
No,
have the same narrative to it. Also,
no,
now going back to the topic where we were on
mm,
Indian Test cricket, there's definitely going to be a loss of advantage unless there's a splitting of format. I think all these players are wonderful players, but I
mm,
think the Australian players, English players, South African
mm,
players, all of them will be just as adept to playing in India
mm,
as these players, because they'll not be grinding it out on the domestic scene. They're
mm,
constantly playing for the IPL.
mm,
So I don't see a future where they're really being as better as the batch of Pujara, Rahane, and before
mm,
that, obviously Lakshman, Dravid. And away from home, I think away from home is a huge cause of concern, because when Rohit took over, you expected
yeah.
India to go from strength to strength from Kohli and win everywhere away from home. We were expected to become invincible from that point on, but as it has happened, we have completely imploded on home itself. So
And do you think now India, perception wise, I'm not talking about in reality because it's always been a great country, but for Westerners, say for a England, Australian, or New Zealander, is a much more kind of attractive place to go now. So, say in the 80s or 90s, you had, I don't know if you remember Phil Tufnell, the former England left arm spinner.
yeah, yeah,
He went there on the tour and he came back. He wrote in his diary, I've done the Taj Mahal, I've done Elephant, I've done the poverty, I want to go home now." And that's what he wrote. And that doesn't sound very nice, but that was like the perception from Western players going there then. Um, and it was like it was a hard slog. It was, I have to go to India for 3 months and play. It's like an inconvenience. The
yeah, yeah,
weather.
yeah, obviously.
Now they go there. The ones who played in the IPL are lauded as heroes. It's a great country. The country is kind of in a way. I don't know if you live there, so it's a bit different. But from the outside, seems like it's booming. Um, the 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 IPL is massive. The players go there; they're treated as heroes, and it's a completely a different kind of feel for those players. They'd rather play there than anywhere else, probably. So it's not like you're going there and you get a home advantage of someone wanting to be there and
Yeah, yeah.
finding it hard. It's people going there and they're really happy to go there and play there.
You have hit on something there. I have picked up on 2 points there. From the India booming thing,
Mm,
I'd say India is booming if you have money. It's a very
mm,
capitalistic society right now. If you have a lot of money, you'll live a lifestyle similar to that you'd live in England or Australia, because there are
mm,
places, specific designated places where you can be. And the players right now who come from Australia, England, or for the IPL, they stay
mm,
in five-star hotels and don't go about as much into the
mm,
lesser rich parts of India. And the second part, which you said on home advantage, yeah, definitely, because right now I think that India is the best place they'd want to be, the only place they'd
mm.
want to be, because
Yeah.
that's where the franchise owners can see them. And you see David Warner,
Yeah.
he puts up an entire act on trying to dancing on South Indian songs,
Yeah, yeah,
making,
I've seen him do that. Yeah.
yeah, making South Indian reels and all of that. And people from here think that David Warner seriously cares about those things. No, he does not. He's just flattering you guys. He does not care about Pushpa and all of that. I just, how gullible is the Indian audience? I just don't know. Like, yeah, I just have no words, and I think that will continue in the future, where foreign players will. You see the media, their media, they are constantly asked to speak good about India, the Indian
Yeah.
players, and
Yeah.
and big up India. And I just feel like that's a bit bad, because you want a bit of rivalry. You don't want them just
Mm.
sucking up to the Indian team always.
Even Kevin Peterson now, you think, is this guy going to join the BJP in the future or something?
Yeah, and
He's really enthusiastic, isn't he?
yeah, and just talking up Modi all the time, like what a great
Yeah.
man Modi is. I have no, I'll not speak about Modi here because
No,
this is not a political
no,
podcast.
no.
But but he, but clearly there's an agenda from Peterson because he knows the more he praises Modi, the more contracts he'll get from the IPL in India. So yeah, it's a very biased, and even AB de Villiers, like I
Mm.
admire AB de Villiers, but you'll see his entire YouTube channel. He has not covered one video on the South African scene. All his videos are on Indian cricket, and they're just trying to milk the Indian audience, and the Indian
Yeah.
audience, obviously, like there's some validation which the Indian audience likes, especially from European countries. So
Mm.
that is there in play, and also like you mentioned earlier, the home advantage thing. I think that's going to lessen a lot, and
Mm.
maybe for the better. We'll have a future in, if everything does not go south and India stops playing
Mm.
test cricket, maybe we'll have a future where the home advantage isn't a big deal and it becomes more
Mm.
like football, where
Yeah.
where you have teams actually competing all everywhere around the world, and that is the best case scenario for Indian test cricket and test cricket as a whole.
Yeah, it might be the case that these players used to franchise cricket just want to play flat pitches, basically like McCollum's side, really, and that you could replicate that across the world, and they just go on flat pitches and just tee off.
Yeah, definitely. So can we say that the home dominance era for India has ended?
No, I don't think you can say that just yet. I think we need a few more tests there to see if someone.
Okay.
I want to see if someone like Australia go there and win, maybe we can say it, but it could just be a blip. So I'd like to see like a greater sample size than just one defeat. Although
Yeah,
3-0 is a big one.
yeah, I agree with you there. And at looking at Ashwin and
Mm.
Jadeja's careers, I think
Mm.
the Border Gavaskar Trophy. Ashwin won't play on the Border Gavaskar Trophy as much,
Mm.
but whatever little he plays, I think if he does not have a seriously notable performance, Ashwin
Mm.
will not be a part of the Indian Test team come next summer. And
Oh wow.
I can bet on it. He'll not be a part because there are a lot of rumors going on right now in the Indian cricket Twitter that from prominent journalists who have connection to the
Yeah.
Indian team that a lot of seniors will be dropped. I think Jadeja has one home season in him still. Uh, Kohli
Will
and
Ashwin go to England in the summer? In the English summer?
I don't think so. I don't think he'll be there.
Oh wow.
I have a serious feeling that Ashwin is going to be left out from the Indian team for good, like Pujara and Rahane.
He
With
didn't get a send off then.
Yeah, but Pujara and Rahane didn't get a send off either.
No, true.
It's just a way of top level sport. I think it's cutthroat uh
Yeah.
with with Rohit and Kohli. I think, like I've mentioned, if Rohit does well in the Border Gavaskar Trophy, I think he'll retire after the World Test Championship final. With Kohli, like I'd mentioned to you earlier as well, I think he had the sight of playing for 4 more years till
Mm.
2027. But
Oh
if he
wow.
does not do well in the Border Gavaskar Trophy, I think he still has the England series which he'll be
Mm.
allowed to play.
Yeah.
And if he does not fare well there, then I think it's curtains for his career.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
He doesn't want another you don't think he'd have another home series in India to say goodbye?
If he has horrible England and Australia series,
Yeah.
then that is a possibility.
Mm.
But there's also the possibility of both of them winning the World Test Championship final and calling it, all four of them calling it a day after that
Yeah,
career.
that's true. They're going out on a high.
Yeah, but I wouldn't like that because he has to complete 10,000 test runs. He's just 900 runs away from 10,000 test runs. That might sound a bit selfish, like
Mm.
player oriented, but I think that's a possibility. And also on other people like KL Rahul's future. If he does not do well in Australia, I think it's his career is done because he's got enough
Yeah.
chances. He's played 50 tests and averages 30. So
Yeah.
he's a bit like Ollie Pope in that sense. Again, he plays one good
Yeah.
innings and just flat after that. And what are the other seniors in the team? There are people who are saying that Pujara and Rahane might be brought back for the Australia series
Mm.
or for the future, but I don't think that will be the right move.
No, really, you want players who play like them, but not actually them themselves. Now it might be time to move on.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. And I think that, just summarizing it as we've done right now, India is in a really bad state, and obviously the Border Gavaskar Trophy will define a lot of players' careers and the trajectory of Indian Test cricket as well as cricket as a whole moving forward. So I think we've covered a lot of topics on this
Mm.
podcast, and if you have any questions, you can send them over to both of our handles, and we'll be back on Friday, obviously, with our regular episodes, and we'll see you then. Goodbye.
But